Welcome to Bodywisdom Talks, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. And in this episode, we are joined by Claire, and Claire is a yoga teacher and a dear companion from a training we both did in teaching trauma-informed yoga. Claire has an inspiring and deeply personal story about her journey with epilepsy and how she discovered Kundalini Yoga as a healing path. And her experience eventually led her to trauma-informed approaches. And today we'll explore how yoga, especially when approached with awareness and compassion, can become a powerful tool for healing. And Claire, thank you so much for being here and for your willingness to share your story with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast. This is my first podcast. I never did one before, so nervous and excited all at the same time.
That's so funny because this is our first invitation too.
We're all in the right place.
And
Yeah.
you're our first guest, which is
Oh,
great. So it's
you.
first all round.
So we are newbies here, and maybe we are all a little bit excited. Yeah, maybe we just start with just arriving here where we are and just taking a breath or just feeling the way we're sitting on our chair, the way our feet connect to the ground. And taking a deep breath in and out and realizing the safe space around us, just arriving together here. Yeah. Okay. How do you feel, everyone? Everyone safe?
That settled me so much. I don't get nervous that often. I'm comfortable in crowds. I'm comfortable with people, but every time I start a new 10-week course in Kundalini or a new 6-week course, the very first evening, I always get the same nervousness, the throat strickens, and I start talking really fast.
Exactly.
And I could feel that feeling starting to come on me again there. So I was so grateful that you introduced the breath, and I'm just completely settled now. Thank you so much, Stefanie.
Wonderful, wonderful. Claire, if it's okay for you, I start with the first question, maybe. Can you tell us a bit about your personal journey and how you came to discover yoga, or especially Kundalini Yoga?
Yes, I would love to share that story with you. And please ask me questions, or if something doesn't make sense, just ask, interrupt me. And yes, I suppose my first introduction to yoga was 20 years ago. When I lived in Jersey in the Channel Islands, and I was friends with this girl, and she says, you have to go to this yoga class. It's absolutely amazing. It makes you feel so calm after, and all the benefits of yoga. And I was like, yes, count me in. And I went, and I hated it. I didn't feel comfortable. There was pain in my body, and I had a slender body at that time. I was relatively fit, but I just didn't feel comfortable. So I never went back. Why would I put myself back in a position where something I don't like and I don't feel comfortable? And then about 5 years later, 6 years later, try yoga again. This was just, I couldn't even tell you what types of yoga this was, probably more like a vinyasa or a hatha yoga. Back in the yoga studio, the same thing. But what I didn't notice at the time, but what I now reflect on was my mind was like, you're crap at this. You're not good enough. You're not flexible enough. You're not thin enough. So when my mind was doing that and my body was signaling me that, you know, you can't do this pose, you can't stay in this pose for so long, why would I put myself into that position? So I never went back again. Fast forward another 10 years, trying different studios, different environments. Something was pulling me towards it. I was looking for something to help me feel good and better in myself. And I was going and I could never find it. And then I've always traveled. I've always loved traveling. I've traveled all over the world. I've lived and worked all over the world. And in 2021, I had a one-way ticket booked from Belfast. I'd handed my notice in my job, and I had a one-way ticket to Central America, a couple of pounds saved, and I was just going to go and just see whatever happened. And a week before I was due to leave, I took 5 epileptic seizures. I have epilepsy, and the way my seizures happen is they happen. I take one, then another one, then another one. I always need hospital. I always have to go to hospital because they need to give me stuff, diazepam, to stop the seizures continuing. Sometimes it can go right up to 7, 8. So when that happened, I was just, my confidence was absolutely knocked. I was like, I cannot go away. And I had 2 wee nieces at the time who were very young and just born. So there was a big pull here as well. So I decided not to go. And I was in this woman's circle. And there was a healer there, a Kundalini Yoga teacher, but she was also an energy worker, a body worker, a healer. And I reached out to her and I said, I need help. I need help. I need to stop these seizures. And she had a course that was like £2,000. It was a 6-month course. It was transformational. It was body work. And I thought she was going to suggest this. So I had a half an hour consultation with her. And I was expecting her to say, you know, this 6-month course is what you need. And being in such a vulnerable position, and just wanting anything outside of me to come and fix me, to come and help me, I probably would have done it. But she says to me, I think a 40-day Kundalini Yoga challenge is what you need. And at first I was like, I was open. I would have done anything that anybody told me at that point. I was so low. I was so fed up with the seizures. And at that point, I hadn't had seizures in 1 year and 3 months. And that was the longest I had ever went seizure free. So the seizures, you do kind of not bounce back, but you do build yourself back up again every time you have them. But this was such a big kick, a big, you know, I was on the floor. And so she suggested Kundalini Yoga. I just moved into a new place. I used to house share, just lived into the new place. So I had a house to myself and I had space and a time in the mornings. And I thought, you know what? I'm really going to give this a go. And she went off, took my date of birth, my time of birth. She did something with numerology. And she came back and she says, I think the Kriya for a negative mind, it matches your numerology and all this here. And when I read the report that she gave me, it made perfect sense. Kriya for the negative mind will balance your neutral mind, your positive mind, and your negative mind. Do this for 40 days, this 40-day Kundalini Yoga challenge. I've never stuck to anything in my life. So I was like, just try to be open, you know, just try and see how you feel. So a couple of days before she gave me the information, I started doing some research and some Googling, and I came across this Kundalini Yoga instructor called Brett Larkin. And she had like a wee 10-minute morning Kundalini Yoga wake up. And I did that before I started the 40 days. And breath of fire was in that. And breath of fire is this powerful, common Kundalini Yoga breath where you rhythmically pump the belly, and it releases endorphins and dopamine and serotonin. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe this. So I could not wait to start the 40-day Kundalini Yoga challenge. So as soon as the girl sent it through, I did it every single day for 40 days. And it was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. After about 20 days into the 40-day challenge, I knew I had to become a Kundalini Yoga teacher. I had to share. I had never in my life felt the way I did internally without using alcohol, shopping, money, relationships. But I had something inside of me that belonged to me and no one else, that was always going to be there, that I could tap into at any given moment and make myself feel better. And for the first time in my life, I actually liked what looked back in the mirror at myself. I was walking down the street and it might have been grey skies, which is very familiar in Northern Ireland, but the sun was shining down on me and the birds were chirping at me, and it was like I was living in a different world to everybody else. It was like magic. It was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I just couldn't believe it. People who I'd known who were close to me were saying there's something different about you, but my body hadn't changed. Like my energy had changed. I had been able to transform that dense energy, that heavy energy, the shame, the guilt, the regret, the anger, the grief, that had been transformed into a different vibration, into a different energy. I was lighter. My body hadn't changed, but I felt thinner. I felt pretty. I was holding my heart and telling myself that I loved myself. Like when I used to say that, when I was in counseling, the counselor would have suggested, you know, affirmations and telling yourself, it used to make me feel angry. We've all been there, some guru or someone's trying to help you just tell yourself you love yourself, and you're like, but it makes me feel angry and sad because I don't. Well, not that you don't, but it creates a negative emotion, a negative response.
Excuse me, Claire, can you tell more about, because was it more like was it happening like in immediately, like something like without realizing that it is happening, or was it happening step by step? Or how do you remember how this change was happening?
I think I felt it immediately, because if I hadn't have felt that biggest impact immediately, I don't know if I would have stuck to it, because that was just the personality that I had. The breath of fire was life-changing for me, and that's because of the body type and the personality and the way I'm wired. But I felt that it was immediate. It definitely really was. Well, after 20 days, I wanted to share this with the world. And yeah, it was immediate, those feelings. And when you first come to the Kundalini class, yes, your movement and you're doing the posture, but you're in with the breath almost instantly. Yoga is changing, but years and years and years ago, you used to have to practice the physical poses and the physical asanas first. And then, after you were disciplined in that, it was only then that you were able to introduce the breath. But with Kundalini, it's the breath first, you're straight in. So when you're working with the breath, like as soon as you start inhaling and exhaling through the nose, the signal's being sent to your nervous system that you're safe. Rest, digest, and recover. And once you're in that state, let the good feelings, they come instantly.
Yeah, that's
So
so
interesting.
interesting what you're saying there, because from somatic coaching, that's where our starting point is, this safety in the nervous system. And also, I'd love to know a little bit more about, because the way we work, Stephanie, is we get the nervous system, we work with it so it finds safety. And from there, we kind of dance with the energy, but it's more kind of somatic and mind, and it's kind of, seeing the patterns and the mind integrating it and feeling it and moving with it. But what you said there really struck me was, from your experience of the Kundalini, the energy had changed. And it seemed so, and that's what we kind of work with as well, very slowly and safely. So the energy changes because it's almost stuck in these patterns and, these different vibrations, it's stuck in patterns with beliefs in certain shapes. But yours just changed, which I'm amazed about. Was there any processing or any kind of unconscious memories coming up, or
Yeah.
stories or beliefs that you could see? Or
Yes. Great question, Alicia. And actually, I would have remembered this. Only you've just jogged my memory there. So I had did a lot of counselling before I found Kundalini Yoga, and so I would have been aware of my thoughts, and I would have been aware of, some patterns and some behaviors. But within about a week of me doing Kundalini Yoga, and the reason why this memory is so clear is because I took a picture of my diary recently. I was going to share it with someone, and it was in the first 7 days. And what happened was I felt a lot of shame living in Belfast, being in Belfast. I left Belfast when I was 17 and a half in flight. I just wanted to get out of here, and I was away for 15 years. But in the first 7 days of Kundalini Yoga, I felt the shame rising up and actually physically leaving my body. And this had been discussed in counselling on numerous occasions, that I felt shame about being here. And I understood from a sort of mental, logical level, but this was it energetically leaving the body. That was the biggest one. Grief, lots of crying, lots of releasing. And I struggled sitting in the pain and the grief and, the resentment. I struggled. So I could never really sit in those for very long, but I knew deep down in my heart through counselling, you got to feel it to heal it. But I would always reach out for something after a while to numb. But Kundalini Yoga built that space, that resilience, that safety. It's okay, because what Kundalini does, like you've just mentioned, you go into whatever you're needing to go into, and it builds resilience through the nervous system, letting you know that you're safe. But sometimes it also puts you in fight or flight for a couple of seconds, and then it brings you back down. So it's reprogramming those patterns and those wires to say, like, you're in control here. Even though you're in fight or flight, or your nervous system is activated, you're bringing yourself back. And you're able to do this, not the wine, not the food, not the spending, not the relationships. It puts you back in control.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I do have, I mean, maybe you have a question there, Stephanie, but I'm wondering, because I don't know much about Kundalini apart from just the energy release somewhat. I've never done it, but how does it bring safety? What practice do you use, or how does it bring safety to the nervous system?
It's all through the breath. So in Kundalini, the default breath is inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. When we inhale through the nose, it takes away a lot of the toxins and the water that is in the breath. So it actually goes deeper into the lungs. Then we guide it down into the diaphragm. Once it gets to the diaphragm, that's it then sending the signal to the nervous system that you are safe. And that can be done with one inhale and one exhale. Once you're in that place of safety, then as you know, the energy starts to change, healing starts to happen. You're safe in a safe space where things can come up where maybe you wouldn't normally allow them. With Kundalini Yoga, we have different breaths that bring about different things. So the inhale with our mouth closed is a relaxing, rest, digest, and recover. The breath of fire, which is pumping the breath in and out through the nose, mouth is closed. Our mouth can be opened. When the mouth is opened, it's a detoxing breath. When the mouth is closed, it is again activating the nervous system initially, but after a couple of pumps of the belly, that rhythmic pumping sends that signal that you're safe. I think one of the key things with Kundalini Yoga is that it has movement and stillness in every single pose. So if your stress response, which mine was normally like run or fight, that's the majority of times I go. I had that option to bring a bit of movement into the stillness and whatever breath I was doing. But if your stress response is normally freeze, you can bring stillness or flight in, whatever you need. If you need the opposite, you can bring that in. But if you still want to be in that comfort zone and that familiar free pattern, you can also go back into that. I think that for me was key. And I always bring that into the teaching, because when people are coming in Kundalini Yoga, you do a pose and then you sit in stillness, guiding people inward so they can sit with those sensations and what's arising. And I always encourage them, if stillness is not for you this evening or in this moment, bring a little bit of movement in. Do what feels right to you.
Yeah.
And that's so wonderful, the way you describe. And I wonder if is it possible to to give an example of how breath of fire would feel like, Claire? Do you think we could try together a little bit
Would you
doing
like
that?
to do it? Yes, absolutely. So breath of fire I love it. I absolutely love it, but it isn't for everybody. The rhythmic pumping of the belly can, depending on your experiences and how we're all put together, it can sometimes make people feel out of control, which then activates the stress response. So, as with everything in a trauma-informed Kundalini Yoga, you are in control every step of the way. If if breath of fire isn't for you today, it doesn't mean to say it won't be for you tomorrow. But we will start very slowly and very gradually. As we are going to be working with the breath, if you have had food in the last hour or maybe hour and a half, you may feel that you don't have as much freedom with the belly, or you may be feeling, if the belly's still digesting, you may not get the full sort of feeling, but that's okay. And also, if you're on your period or you could be pregnant, then we don't do breath of fire. Okay. So breath of fire you can guide people into breath of fire two ways. But we'll start with the traditional way. So I invite you to sit in a comfortable position. One of the ways we guide breath of fire is through the puppy pant. So it's a little bit, it can be a little bit funny, but we stick our tongues out and we pump our belly. You know the way a puppy would pump its belly? And all we're doing is we're just grabbing the belly button and pulling it back towards the spine. The exhale is active. And the inhale is passive. It's equal exhales and equal inhales. And what we do is we just kind of tune in to the belly. You're going at your own pace. Some people like to do it really fast. Some people like to do it really slow. So we're going to find a pace that works for you. And once you feel familiar with the belly movement, we invite you to close your eyes and then close your mouth. This breath is counterintuitive to how we are used to breathing. So the mind comes in, you're not doing it right. Belly's not doing it right. You're doing it round the wrong way. So it's just about tuning into the belly. All you're really doing is trying, I like to bring it in with, you're almost trying to blow out an invisible candle with the belly in your breath, the air in your belly, sorry. We fill the belly full of air and we Which one of those felt better for you? Was it the pumpy pant or pretending to blow out a candle? Or which felt strained?
Alicia, would you like to
The
start?
puppy pant for me, I liked. It was very, I can feel it in my head. It's still like it's very buzzy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm still resonating. How are you, Stefanie? Which did you like?
I think the first, how's it called? The puppy
Puppy pant.
and I like that more, but there was something happening during this the second one. Like in the beginning it wasn't comfortable, but then it felt more and more comfortable. And so it's hard to say for me, but what I realized is something like I felt more calm afterwards, like something is calming down inside of me. I still can feel it, like my nervous system is calming down, and like putting so much effort and muscle power and attention on this exercise. Somehow, when then after that, and just feeling uh, how my body feels afterwards, then I can realize I have calmed down.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting, because if you would ask me, am I calming down when I'm doing the exercise or afterwards, I couldn't tell you really. That's interesting.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are all very, very common responses. It's when you first come across it, and I know you have a little bit of experience, Stefanie, with it, but when you first come across it, people are just like, what? But if you can just gently, step into it, being gentle and compassionate to yourself, that after feeling, Alicia, you're right, that is the hormones, the endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. That's what you're pumping from the belly. The energy's going up into the brain, balancing both sides of the brain, relaxing the nervous system and releasing those hormones. And for someone who has led a life of living life at 100 miles an hour, chasing the highs, I can see that there may be a little bit of a baby addiction to Breath of Fire.
Mm.
Swapping one for the other. But
That's so funny that you said that, because for the second one, like the first one, yeah, Stephanie, after you said, the settling, I felt it was like, I was a glitter. It was like glitter in me in water, and you shook it. It was like that, and it was all buzzy. And then when you said Stephanie, I was still coming down. It was still like, and then they settle. But for this one, the blowing one, I had a visualization of bellows,
oh
and
wow,
actually
yeah,
of like my auntie's house. But those old bellows? I don't know if you know them, Stephanie, for blowing out the fire in Ireland. Anyway, they're quite a
Yeah, I
funny
know them.
contraption. And it was that, but because I was blowing. But anyway, it was
Alicia,
just interesting how that visualization came. But it's a fire practice.
that is so
I didn't get
so
that connection.
beautiful, so beautiful. Actually, when I was learning Kundalini Yoga, that was the description that they give. It's like you're pumping your belly like the bellows.
Oh.
And you just had that beautiful visualization. Oh my God. That
Wow.
is so, so beautiful.
Interesting.
Mm.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for showing us this how it could feel, this practice. And I have another question coming back to your journey of healing, especially in relation to epilepsy.
Yeah.
And you said you told us about how you have changed and how the shift was happening. And can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of impact this was having on your epilepsy, or what did happen after that?
I forgot to mention the best part. I was I'm just going to stand up, just getting carried away in the story.
Yeah.
So from September 2021, I have been seizure free. This is the longest I've ever been. So we're coming up to 3.5 years without an epileptic seizure. So from just a little bit more depth to the story, like I mentioned, I left Belfast at 17 and a half, and I lived in Jersey and Ireland and Amsterdam, and I partied and I lived the life running away from myself, from the feelings, I just didn't want to be inside my body. And I returned home in 2005 to stay here for 6 months to save up money to go on a round the world trip. And I was going to leave on the 25th birthday on the 6th of June 2025. And I came back and was only back 2 months, and I had my first ever epileptic seizure. And I got diagnosed then with epilepsy. But anyway, I didn't make the June departure date, but I went off in November. Not a care in the world. Didn't care that I had epilepsy. Didn't care I had all this medication. I was going on this trip. And off I went. I was only supposed to be away 12 months, but I ended up staying away for 4.5 years, 5 years, and not one seizure. Now, I was on medication for about a year, but once I was away, I stopped the medication, and not one seizure. I came back to Belfast in 2010, and I was only back again another couple of months, and the seizures happened again.
Unbelievable.
So the doctor, the neurologist, was like alcohol, stress, sleep, all the usual sort of. They were saying that's what the triggers were, but I just knew deep in my heart that it was something more, because I know the life that I had lived when I wasn't in Belfast was exactly the same to the life I led in Belfast. So how could the seizures only happen here? So there had to be more to the story. So from 2010, I was back in Belfast, living back on the Shankill where I came from. I had a husband who had married from Asia. He was also with me, and it was just, I was full of anger. And I didn't really know where this was coming from. I didn't really know. I didn't really know. It was directed at, maybe men who'd maybe, bullied or hurt me or my family in the past. And it wasn't really one thing that I was angry at. So then the relationship, my marriage broke down, and I was taking seizures all the time. I was drinking, and I was like, how could someone who is supposed to be normal and love themselves and, want a good life, why am I still drinking when I know there's a risk of me taking a seizure? Why am I still doing this? There's something not right inside me. Another failed relationship, except this time a failed marriage. And I was jealous, I was insecure, I had low self-esteem, I had low self-worth. But when people met me, they didn't think that when they first met me. It was actually, people say, if you would have shared, when I share that now, people are like, no way, Clara, sure you've traveled the world. But I may have done that, but though that was what you saw on the outside, in the inside, my self-esteem was on the floor. So I was working in a really amazing company at the time, surrounded by very safe people, very supportive people. It was a company where there was 15 different nationalities, which was very, very, very unusual for Belfast. And I was living with a friend at the time, and her mum was a counsellor, and again, another very, very safe person. And she says to me, would you ever think of going to counselling? And that had never entered my mind before, and I was thinking, well, maybe I should give this a try. And in 2015, started counselling, and that was, I suppose I always say they're the before me and the after me. That was when kind of I started that was the start of the healing journey. So I kind of went off on one there, and got lost in the story. But 2015 was the start of the healing journey, and I was doing energy work and stuff, kind of Reiki and theta healing, you name it. If someone had said to me, this will help your epilepsy, I would have done it. I once sent like €50 to this complete stranger I'd never met before, never spoke to on the phone, to his bank. Some guy lived in Ireland because someone says he can cure epilepsy. You're always looking like for that easy fix, like, instead of like, sitting in counselling, doing the work, feeling the feelings. Can someone from outside of me come please and fix me? So yeah, that, and then, as you know, 2021, Kundalini. But before I started the Kundalini, and even with the counselling, from when I woke up in the morning till I went to bed at night, there was something, it almost felt as if it was like right here, something inside of me wanting me to escape me, wanting me to like maybe have a glass of wine, or and at this stage, coming close to the September 2021, I would have went out and had a good few drinks, but I would have only maybe had 1 or 2 drinks during the week, maybe 1 or 2 nights. I had really cut down, and it was like, so from when you woke up in the morning to when you went to bed at night, there was this constant, incessant voice inside your head, continuing constantly, like almost wanting you, looking for escapism. Whether that was through spending money, booking trips, going to concerts, like dating, you name it, like anything that distracted you from being present, from being with you. And when I started Kundalini in September 2021, that was that for me was the biggest, like, it was okay to be with me. I was okay. I was okay. I am okay. I'm okay who I am. Claire Dumican, it's okay to be me. I'm perfect and whole and complete just as I am. And that was transformational, because when you're operating from that space, you make different choices. You make different decisions. You interact, you speak different, you interact different, you set boundaries. Your whole life changes.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Very personal story. And what's so touching for me is when you, after all of this and facing so much of difficult emotions and sensations in life, when you had this kind of awakening experience with Kundalini Yoga, would you say that this, it was just like you have changed so much from there that you felt completely different, or was it at some time coming back, or how was this happening?
Yes. So sometimes the pain and emotions, definitely they come back, and they still do, and I still get triggered 100%. But when you're triggered, first of all, so I'll give you a little indication of how I was in the past. I would have, in a relationship, I'll give you that example because that's a sort of good way. I would have almost like imagined my boyfriend like doing something. Like, it was almost as if my belief about men being bad and going to hurt you and like they're not good, it was almost as if my belief created me actually seeing my boyfriend doing something that he didn't actually do, but I believed that he had. And it was as if something had taken over my body. It was really mad. And like I mustn't have been a very pleasant person to be in a relationship with, and I was in survival mode, and I've did a lot of work to forgive myself for, a lot of the behaviors. But I would have been like, so like, you did do that, and I would have been so triggered. I would have been in the stress response. I would have been like angry and shouting, and sometimes my boyfriend would have been like, I just don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't like that. And I had to almost, once it was like a domino effect. Once that first domino fell, I had to go through and have that trigger, that experience. And once, it was only when that trigger had run its full circle and I was able to calm back down, was then I able to see sense. So that was in control. I wasn't in control of that. after the Kundalini Yoga, I was in control. My triggers were happening. I could feel them in my body. I could feel the pain happening. But I was able to say, oh, I see that there's a little bit of anger coming up. I honor you. I see you. And I let you go. Or whatever it was in the time. Maybe it was like, oh, here comes a wave. Get ready. Here comes a wave. Sometimes, like, they would have lasted for weeks before, sometimes months on end. And when I first started Kundalini, they would have they didn't last as long. I couldn't give you exact times, but now, this present moment, 3.5 years later, they come in, they're there for a very short period of time, minutes, and then they're away again.
Alicia, do you have any question?
No, I totally resonate, and thank you for being so honest. I totally resonate with what you're saying, particularly around, you know, the I'm not good enough belief, because I think you mentioned that at the beginning. And it's almost like, and everybody has that in different ways, but the way you were talking when you were with your partner, I totally resonate with that you invent stuff. And
Yep.
I kind of was saying, for me, it was like, I'm not good enough. It's such a strong belief, and it's attached to the energy, and the pattern is so strong. It's like a big tidal wave. And it's almost like it needs to keep inventing stuff so that you can kind of hide and keep safe. It's so, I'm trying to understand it now, but this is my understanding. I don't even know if it makes sense, but so you keep, and it's mad how you keep perpetuating the traumas and the stuff, which makes you feel miserable, but I think it's only to keep you hidden. And then I think it's almost like I'm realizing now, and I think you mentioned that, that now you've realized, oh, I can see the wave, and it comes, and sometimes they last, and it's almost like, oh, I'm beginning to realize for me that I'm the ocean, and having, so the waves can arise, and sometimes I get so stuck in them, but it's a real energetic uncoupling, almost. How do you find it, Stefanie, in the somatic work, the beliefs and the attachment to the energy?
Yeah, there's a huge impact happening, of course. And the thing is, I guess, is how reactive are we? How do we react immediately, or are we able to realize what's happening and then bringing, as you said, some kindness in this process? And saying, okay, I know what's going on here. That was happening so many times, and now I know what to do. I'm not helpless, the helpless child anymore that I have been, or the helpless person in that traumatic situation. Now I know what to do, and I can actually help myself now. And then you step in, and sometimes you even need to make contact to your inner child, or whatever has been there, and realizing, okay, that's where we go through now again. But now I'm here. Now I can take over and guide you in a safe way. So yeah, you come back to yourself again and be safe just where you are with whatever is there, isn't it?
It's Speaking of the inner child, again, you've jogged my memory, Stephanie. And I have to say, my memory has been impacted by the amount of seizures that I have, and so I've always struggled with recall. So it's beautiful to be, when you talk about something that prompts another memory. But I do want to just pick up something that Alicia said. But now we're on the inner child. I'll just start here. A big thing, the inner child came up a lot during those first 40 days with the Kundalini Yoga, and I had worked with the inner child in counselling, but again, in the counselling, and my counsellor she was an angel, and she was quite spiritual, and she would have, brought the spirituality and the energy into it. But when I was doing those first 40 days, my inner child came out, and a part, again, shame. So when I was younger, I was always seeking attention, and it would have been like, you know, dancing and trying to get people's attention. And I shamed myself for that. And that was a part of me that I felt shame. And when sitting in Kundalini on the mat, you know, she was there and she was dancing and she was acting in Egypt and she was shaking her bum and she was laughing and playing. And it was just a real connection of us just coming together as one, and healing really happening right in front of your face, right in front of you. And it was just to love her and smile at her, and you know, and I think that that has to happen. That connection has to happen. And it was just so beautiful. So thank you for reminding me of that memory, Stefanie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something about the shame, sensation of shame, because Gabor Mate is saying that this sensation of shame is one of the strongest we can have at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so powerful, and it takes over so much inside of us. And there to step in and so that another part of you the healing part takes over and says, okay, you feel so ashamed, that's so powerful, but can we find something here that you can come out of the shame and you don't have to feel like this anymore. And I think that's something that you discovered then there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually was shocked when the shame came up, because I thought, oh, I dealt with that. I've been over this a million times in yoga, 7 years, you know, at that point. Um, you know, I'm healed. I've dealt with that. So I was quite shocked, and at just how powerful it was. And again, it's all that, you know, you deal with it in the mental level, but the emotions are energy. And that was it, the energetic part, releasing or transmuting or healing, whatever way you describe your energy. Um, that was it, transforming, so I could then fully love myself. Yeah.
It's so interesting, just you talking about shame, both of you, because I'm beginning to see it, like I visualize it as such a cloak to keep you really hidden. I mean, it's almost like, you know, we develop stuff to stop doing stuff, but then shame is like the gatekeeper. You're not going to do it. But really, I'm beginning to see it as such a protective layer. Like, so it's like the guards you have, and then there's the sentry, you know, don't. And it reminds me of the Buddha, the Sutra of the Arrows is the Buddha. You may have heard it. Have you heard it at all? About suffering. It's like the Sutra of the Arrows is we all receive the first arrow, which is the arrow of suffering. So everybody suffers. You cannot go through life without somebody dying. You know, there's always without pain, there's always pain. But the second arrow is the arrow of it's basically the attachment. It's the relationship to our suffering. So it's like I have pain, and then it's like I don't want the pain, or I want more of it. You know, it's either grasping or pushing away. And then there's another arrow which somebody else coined, which is the arrow of shame, which is you're hit by the first, you don't want it, and then there's something wrong with me
Yeah.
because I'm hit by the first and the second arrow. So it's like three layers. But it's interesting that you're both saying, even with bringing the inner child and the kindness, it really is, when we unpack it, it's really, and you were saying, Claire, about turning inwards all the time, you know, it's really to come home, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be, those mechanisms are there to keep us safe for whatever reason we believed when we were a kid.
Yeah.
And it's a real befriending, isn't it? And kindness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I suppose that's, as a Kundalini yoga teacher, all Kundalini yoga teachers, or all yoga teachers, will teach from their own sort of experiences and their own sort of ideology. And for me, there's a lot of, I talk a lot about the mind in my class. I'm trying to create a space for, it's 1 hour a week where women, I teach women can come and feel safe enough to be compassionate to themselves, to be kind, or to just, for once in their life, listen to their own voice, as in, I don't want to do this, or I want to do more of this, or I want to move quicker in this pose, or I want to stay in stillness, because as soon as they leave that room, someone will be wanting something from them. So for 1 hour a week, it's all about you. Now, as we know, and we've just talked about on this show, people are coming in with their own stories, their own beliefs. So it's slowly, like, every week delivering that message. Become aware of your thoughts, become aware of the body. Is there a disconnect? Is your thought saying something and then your body saying something else? Tuning in. But I'm on a mission.
That's such a beautiful practice, really. I think this, especially for us women, this would be so helpful for everyone. And I'm just thinking, because we're just about to reaching our time limit, and we might come up with another episode about the shame, because especially in a female body,
Oh, yes.
that's a huge topic, isn't it?
I think it's just so deep and so complex, because we're shamed just for being women, even if you don't even do anything. If you don't,
Right.
you don't even look at anybody. We're shamed. Our bodies are shamed just because we are women. Like,
Right.
so deep and so complex. But yeah, and it's about, like, let's reverse that bit by bit.
Yeah. So coming slowly to an end here. Alicia, do you have any question to ask to Claire?
No, I just want to thank you. I love your honesty and your openness and just your whole journey. It's fascinating with, the epilepsy and the Kundalini. And when you were talking about, like, what stayed with me was just the shift in the energy, that it suddenly shifted from the old patterns to new. Through the Kundalini. And then it was like, even when you were talking about it, your eyes, everything just, and everything just shifted. Your passion is so evident. Yeah. I'd love another episode. Yeah. Um, at some stage to talk about shame. Thank you very much. It was lovely to meet you.
Alicia, absolutely lovely to meet you too. And it's so, again, talking about energy, you have mentioned two things on this podcast today, and it's so, well, it's not strange. It used to be strange when you had those synchronicities, but one of them I drew attention to, I can't really remember, but that second one, that arrow story, that came up in my Instagram last night. I cannot believe it. The beauty of synchronicities. So thank you so much for having me, and it's been so lovely to meet you. And what a beautiful podcast.
Oh, and Claire, if somebody would like to work with you or get to know more about what you're doing, how can they connect to us? One way, we put your contact, if you want to, in our video description.
Yes,
But,
thank you.
yeah.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. It's Movement Without Judgment. And at the moment, I'm just doing in-person classes, but over time, I will eventually move to online. But yes, even if people just want to follow my page for information, and eventually, I haven't got there yet, but eventually I will start posting, poses and breath work on the pages as well, but people will be able to follow along.
Oh, beautiful. Movement Without Judgment. What a nice
Yeah.
name.
Well, yeah, we judge ourselves so much. I just thought, like, just come and just be you.
Yeah, and it fits to the topic of shame again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This has been a beautiful experience. Thank you for letting me share my story. You forget, it just kind of melts into your background, and you're just getting on with life. But actually, it's so powerful that the seizures don't happen anymore. Like, I just keep on needing to remind myself just how amazing that is.
This is amazing. It is amazing, and it's so nice. Thank you so much for sharing your story with such openness and depth behind it. And your journey reminds us how powerful it can be to reconnect with the body, and especially when we approach ourselves with patience and presence and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And to all our listeners, if Claire's story touched something if you're exploring your own healing through movement and mindfulness, know that you're not alone. And we hope this conversation sparked something meaningful for you, and like it did for us. And if you'd like to hear more episodes like this, feel free to follow Bodywisdom Talks and share it with someone who might benefit from it. Yeah, and until next time, be gentle with yourself and stay curious. And we hopefully see each other soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.